Our president, Anne McDermott, is unable to be here tonight, so she's asked me to introduce tonight's speaker. And tonight's speaker is Dr. Ruth Carden. Ruth is a palaeozoologist, zooarchaeologist, and Quaternary faunal specialist working in Ireland on commercial and academic projects for more than 20 years. Currently, Ruth is part-time research scientist with the School of Archaeology, UCD, on the Irish Cave Bones project. She has wide-ranging commercial and research interests, which are driven by a multidisciplinary approach, including key themes, including zoology, palaeoecology, GIS, spatial modeling, zooarchaeology, and the dynamics between human-animal relationships and the palaeoenvironment during the last 50,000 years. Tonight, Dr. Carden is talking to us about the Irish Cave Bones project, which has been going since 2007, and which was started by Dr. Carden with subsequent multidisciplinary collaborators joining over the years. Her talk will introduce the origins of the project, its timeline, pivotal milestones right up to now. She'll also discuss the importance of the bones and current excavations that are ongoing with the project team. And future works will be discussed too, and a teaser to a pivotal and significant moment in Irish prehistory shall be dropped. So I'm going to hand you over to tonight's speaker, Dr. Ruth Carden.
Thank you very much, Rory, and I thank the Ulster Archaeological Society for inviting me to present tonight. It's a wonderful opportunity to allow us to share our research, ongoing and past. And I suppose I have to mention that this I suppose it started as a team of one back in 2006-07. And then throughout the years, it's progressed to a multiple team of different people from different areas, different disciplines, different countries, and it makes us actually research and approach research questions to do with the Quaternary fauna and humans' presence in Ireland during the last thousands of years. Quite a I suppose a uniform, but also quite a holistic way of approaching questions and answering and so on. So we're sponsored by various funders. The Royal Irish Academy funds our excavation grants, and my main funder is the Irish Research Council on the Coalesce grant. We also have collaborations, obviously, with UCD, Liverpool John Moores University, University of New Brunswick in Canada, 14 Chrono in Belfast, Queen's University, and Cork County Council as well, and the Heritage Council. So to start, I suppose, any journey through time, we have to, and any story through time, we have to start more or less at the beginning. So I began researching the origins of red deer in Ireland through time, and I wanted to know where the modern populations of deer in the country came from in terms of its archaeological history. And during this research, I began to look at what I fondly call the Irish cave bones, but these are bones from multiple caves excavated in the late 1800s to the mid 1900s and held in the National Museum of Ireland, and the National Museums of Northern Ireland also hold cave collections as well. And during this research, I began to notice there was a lot of misidentifications of the bones in these caves collections in the museum, in the National Museum of Ireland. And it got me wondering how many more misidentifications there were. And of course, these identified bones in the past have informed our current conservation and management strategies for various species that live in Ireland today that are believed to be native. Whether, as time will tell, not all what we consider to be native, as in they got to Ireland under their own steam without any human intervention, aren't native. So the importance of studying the past to inform the present and the future is always there, and that's what, you know, archaeology can feed into, and obviously the study of zooarchaeology as well, going back through time. So I then got in touch with Helen Lewis, who joined the UCD School of Archaeology, and we applied for a small 3-month grant with the Heritage Council here in 2009-10. And that let me basically have undivided attention to look at the Edenvale Cave Complex, which is a complex of cave fauna remains, excluding the birds. So I concentrated on mammals first, from 5 different caves, and they're located just outside Ennis in County Clare. But only let me, you know, have time for 3 months, and that wasn't exactly an awful lot of time. But I got through about 12,000 bones, of which about 4,500 were identifiable to species. So that was a good start. And then after that, we tried to get more funding, and you know, we fell dead in the water. So during personal time, on and off throughout the, you know, various years that I wasn't doing various contracts and holiday time, I continued to go into the National Museum of Ireland. The natural history collections were where they were. The keeper, Nigel Monaghan, and Matthew Parks were there to help me and assist and allow access, which was great. And so basically continued on all the way through to, I suppose, modern times, so to speak. But as you'll see, that various collaborations kind of spun out of this work as I got through it piecemeal. Now, I haven't finished by any means, because there's an awful lot. But in 2015, then I teamed up with Dr. Richard Jennings out of John Moore's Liverpool John Moore's University. I always get that mixed up. And Colleen O'Driscoll, who's now with the National Monuments of Ireland, on Balnaminter Cave. I had completed the museum bones collection of Balnaminter Cave with a reassessment. So I take measurements. I basically apply traditional zooarchaeological techniques, you know, recording the type of bone, which side of the animal, you know, and then overall the minimum number of animals within the assemblage. Now the assemblage is quite small. Some of it was lost through time, which is unfortunate. But it boils down to about 2,000 bones that were originally excavated from Balnaminter Cave. And that Richard's got new funding from the Royal Irish Academy to do various cave excavations. As you can see here, this is a one year in process. And they range from 2014 to 2018, and they were all funded by the Royal Irish Academy. And we have established there's still sediment from pre-Ice Age, or the late glacial maximum, as well as post the Ice Age. So we have faunal remains still in cave sediment, and some of them have been excavated out now with these excavations carried out by Richard and the team. And at the moment, there's a major paper in preparation at the moment that accumulates all these years of excavations, as well as the museum archive of the bones and so on, and our interpretations. So some interesting findings were made, which we will, well, you'll have to get me back for another talk, or get Richard for a talk on that. So then in 2015, I was going through the rest of the Edenvale complex, going through it by bit by bit, in various boxes, looking through various bones. And I came across an adult brown bear kneecap or patella bone with linear defects or incised marks on it. And it got me wondering, I wonder, you know, what kind of tool made this? And the more I looked, the more I looked under the microscope, and the more I suddenly realized, well, it wasn't a metal tool, it was actually a stone tool. So one evening, Dr. Marion Dowd from Sligo IT, we were chatting over the phone, and I mentioned it to her on the phone. And we said that we'd apply for radiocarbon dating and get some independent verification, which we did. And this is the kneecap here. So you can see the linear. Now there is some bone eroded, so you can see these white patches as some of the bone has the outer bone has eroded already. But you can see these linear defects or incised marks And there's more on the back as well, and some of them are cross-cutting each other as well. So we got a radiocarbon dated once, and then we couldn't, quite believe it, because we've brown bear in Ireland until about 3,000 years ago. Brown bear is very prolific in Ireland. It occurs from in the 40,000s years ago to 3,000. That's the latest date that we have in the Bronze Age. So we wanted to make sure that the radiocarbon date was accurate. So we got it dated again. And it turned out it was the first evidence of the Upper Paleolithic in Ireland. So dated to about 10,800 years ago. So pushing back from the Mesolithic presence, which is more settlement and camps and so on. This is just evidence of a presence. We can't actually say, what kind of presence, just based on one bone. But this was exciting. This is the first time we have to think outside the box, or as I like to say, well, what box? There is no box now. So we have to think beyond and what the possibilities are, and look at items previously disregarded in new light, perhaps going forward. So then in 2015, 2017, I collaborated with the late Professor Peter Woodman from University College Cork on Caloric Cave. This is a cave on the Mulcair River in County Limerick, and there was 10,600 odd animal bones in this cave assemblage. And these days, there were human remains in the cave as well, not full bodies, but partial skeletons. And both the humans and the animals dated to early Mesolithic to late Bronze Age. But also we had post and pre-Ice Age faunal remains as well, dated in terms of giant deer, reindeer, and Arctic lemming. Interesting enough, we also have Neolithic and Bronze Age dogs. I'm following this up now in another project. These were purposely burnt and buried in front of the cave entrances. There's two entrances here. There's one here and one here, and they were buried in front of the entrance. So some kind of perhaps ritual deposition of some sort was going on. Whether they were burnt in situ or their remains moved in, time will tell. I have to do some more research on this. And then also we have the earliest horse to date in Ireland after the Ice Age. It's dated to Middle Bronze Age, and this is quite important as well. So we don't know much about horses in regard to post Ice Age, before the Iron Age, basically. So I'm working with Dr. Rena Maguire on a project on horses that will kind of cover the various age ranges and time periods to delve into more what type of horses we had, where they actually been ridden, and so on, and of course where did they come from. So then we get into 2016 to current. So back in 2016, I again going through cave bones, this time in the museum in regards to Castlepook Cave, which is in County Cork, and I found something of great interest, and I got onto a long-time friend and collaborator, and Alan McDevitt, who's now in the Atlantic Technological University, or GMIT for us people who like the old way. But yeah, we had a big conversation, and at the time we said, right, we'll apply for radiocarbon funding and get the bones dated. And then in 2019, I got asked to be filmed as part of the Burren Heart of Stone TV documentary series, which was then due to be aired in April 2021. So from November 2019, we're still finishing some background analysis and so on to do with these certain bones. And I thought I had plenty of time. And then, of course, the pandemic hit. So everything slowed and everything stopped. So the heel of the hunt is that we have butchered reindeer bones. This is the incised linear defect here. It's also being picked up by various carnivores. So these are carnivore tooth pits, but this is the actual mark of interest. And there's a few other bones like this. And the heel to hunt is that we'll have written 2 papers this year, submitted by September, the first one, and then by November, the second one, which will hold the story of these bones. So I'm not going to give away too much now, but basically that's the pivotal significant time change in our prehistory in Ireland. So you'll have to stay tuned for that one. Also then, before Peter passed away suddenly, I was collaborating with him and Tom Hyam on redating previous bones that Peter had dated back in the 1990s, but that was before the ultrafiltration stage, when you actually radiocarbon date. So the dates, unfortunately, from his Irish Quaternary faunal project, and he dated about 100 radiocarbon dates, are all inaccurate. As we found out, when we redated the same bones that he dated for his 1997 paper, most came back older by between 2,000 and 12,000 years. So that's a huge difference. So it just means that you can't rely on any of the dates from this paper that he published in 1997. So if we look at them in more detail, we have various sequences of dates from different species. Grey wolf and woolly mammoth were the only 2 that went younger by about 2,000-ish years. But you can see there's significant jumps in time for a lot of them. And when we look at these in more detail in relation to the ice models that have been put forward for the last ice age in Ireland, we have to question basically the dates are right. We've double checked them and triple checked them, but the ice sheet models are in question. You can't have living animals like woolly mammoth and reindeer surviving on basically a glacier. And then how do the bones get inside a cave? So we have to wonder, well, where the bones in situ during the ice age, or where they put in, was the ice coming down as far as County Cork, or did it only appear for a little bit of time and then retreat away, and so on. So if we look at this is the ice model proposed by Patton et al. And published in 2017. So we can see Ireland's way over here, and this is at 34,000 years, and you can see a nice little land bridge up there to Scotland, and then the forming of the actual glacier, the Irish ice sheet. And when we go through time, then at 30,000, just about, you have Northern Ireland now beginning to form a glacier, but you still have a bit of land here connecting to parts of Scotland. Cork down here is relatively ice-free. Then at 27, huge jump down. The glacier has extended much further. We still have County Cork down here, more or less ice-free. We have connections with south-west England and then north-west France. So a fair amount of land there to cover. And then we can just see that at 25.9, the ice is more or less pretty much extended across Ireland, but there's still a bit of ice free. Now we have reindeer at 25,700. So that's down in Castlepook Cave. So they're living down there, maybe near enough to the ice sheet, but they are living down there and they're surviving. And of course they can move freely towards this land down here as well. And then at 22.7, the ice has totally extended. Now, shortly at 21.8, we have, woolly mammoth down in Cork down here. So unless the ice retreats very, very fast, there just seems to be a discrepancy. And then at 24.3, we have the ice then retreating. The glacier is retreating. We've reindeer again at Castlepook at 20.2. So it is relatively ice-free. There's still some connection. At 19, then we have the ice still retreating, not an awful lot, but it still is retreating. And we've also grey wolf and Castlepook at 19.6. So again, near enough to the glacier, but they're still surviving there. and there's still like access to loads of land. Then at 17, you have then the ice retreating all the way into the north again, and Ireland is beginning to becoming an island. And by 15.2, then Ireland is an island. There's still some land off here off the south east coast, but it is an island that that we can see. So we have to ask, you know, how did animals get to Ireland, and at what time and at what stage, and is it without human intervention, or is it, you know, by themselves, going across the various land masses? So these are questions that, you know, the Irish cave bones, through a series of extensive radiocarbon dating, we can answer how and when things got in, and therefore infer paleoclimate and palaeoenvironment and the palaeoecosystems and so on. So two cave bones, two cave bones from grey wolves were included in this study on the origins of dual dog ancestry from wolf. We used a wolf bone from the Plunkett Cave in County Sligo, and also one from Balnamintra Cave, which is in County Waterford. And that was published in 2022. And then, you know, since then, there's been other collaborations and projects going, including the Coalesce from the Irish Research Council, and the Royal Irish Academy funding is ongoing. So in essentially, you know, this is where we are currently. We're now all joined up, one big happy caving research family. We have various cave excavations ongoing. Castlepook Cave, Kilcoman, which we started this year, just there a couple of weeks ago. Balnamintra is wrapped up, apart from we will be going back to do some more excavations there. We start with Kilgraney later this year. Kesh is next year. And of course, I have Killora cave bones from Peter Woodman, that collaboration with Peter. And I still then continue. So we have all these, you know, this is our part of our caving team. And these are some bones you can just about see. There's a closer one up now in the next slide. But so we still have the exploration and the excavation of various caves. So this is all part now of our grand plan to address palaeoecosystems and palaeoenvironments in Ireland, human and animal relationships and dynamics, as well as then continuing on with the museum archive of producing catalogues of these cave collections, both within the National Museum of Ireland, even though there's limited access at the moment to these collections. But I'll be going up to the Ulster Museum soon to discuss and collaborate with Greer Ramsey and Mike Sims on their cave collections and other kind of interesting collections. So, you know, basically the museums win. It's a win-win benefit. We get to know so much, but also the museum gets an orderly, you know, collection of bones, fully bagged, labeled, catalogued, ordered, etc. So they're delighted for that to happen. We've established a collaborating partnership with 14 Chrono in Queen's University Belfast. So they'll be looking after our radiocarbon dating, which is brilliant. They're a great team up there, and our dates are safe in their hands. We are also extracting ancient DNA with various partners as well. The Francis Crick Institute in London, they're looking after the dog and wolf DNA. And then Professor Dan Bradley in Trinity College Dublin, he's looking at various other extractions of ancient DNA from different species in collaboration with us as well. Excuse me. Excuse me. So also we're trying to infer what type of diet the animal has been eating. So we look at stable isotopes. So for example, in carbon, the stable isotope of carbon, the ratio we identify between marine and terrestrial carbon sources. So if the main source of protein is either fish or terrestrial meat from, you know, that the animal is eating, we'll be able to determine that from the stable isotopes. as well as other stable isotopes as well, inferring other things. We're doing a very much a multi-range of different type of mapping. We have photogrammetry here. This is Castle Pook site here. This is the cave, a little rocky outcrop, but then of course it's underneath it extends much further. We have LiDAR as well of the region, and then internally the mapping team we work and collaborate with the Cork Speleological Group, and they have a team of 8 people that go in alternatively every weekend to literally spend the day underground mapping various parts of Castle Pook. So we have a lot of Castle Pook interiorly mapped by about mid-May, and that work then will continue on further. And that shows us that the original map, which you'll see in a minute, it's actually in reality now it's much bigger, because Usher didn't get around to all of the cave originally in 1904 to 1914. And of course then we've lots of research, lots of reading, etc. to do, and get into the various paleoecosystems and palaeoenvironments and analyze the data, and then of course have plenty of coffee to make our brain cells work, and of course then share the information through outreach, as well as various talks, presentations, conferences, and so on. So Castle Pook excavations in 2022 onwards. The background to this is Richard J. Usher. He was informed of Castle Pook Cave, or then it was known as Carrickfuki, in May 1904 by a friend of his, Lord Castletown. He was down actually in the region doing some bird watching. He was a great birder at Kilcoman Lake, which is near Kilcoman Cave. And he was informed of this is Castle Pook Cave, and he created this artificial entrance through dynamiting to get a straight line basically for wheelbarrows in and out by his team. So he began his excavations on the 6th of September in 1904, and then unfortunately due to ill health, I think more than anything else, he finished up on the 13th of August 1913, and unfortunately he passed away at the grand age of 72 in October of that same year in 1913. So he wasn't a well man towards the end. But due to the first finds, which was basically numerous bones and tusks of woolly mammoth, Usher did name the cave Mammoth Cave, and then all through the years it eventually became known as Castle Pook Cave. He also noted evidence of flood waters and stream waters, which was quite good. It's basically we have Mike Sims from the Ulster Museum, or the National Museums of Northern Ireland, collaborating with us as the geologist. His speciality is the birth of caves and how caves work. By knowing how caves work, we then know how bones get into the cave and how they end up where they are to a certain extent. So where they washed in with flood waters, like melting from the glacier, or did they fall in from above due to a roof collapse, and so on and so forth. So when we look at Usher's notebook, this is a page from his notebook, the first page. He did make notes in his excavation notebook of animal like bone remains that were coming out of the cave, certain parts of the cave, and he made tick marks as to the number. Now this isn't entirely accurate, and unfortunately, as I found out, some of the animals that he does name are misidentified. They're something else. But just going literally by his notebook, it kind of gives you a sense of I suppose volume of bones that he was coming back with that were identifiable to a species. Now this excludes the bird remains for the moment, and that's a case for another time. But in terms of brown bear, there was just over 882 brown bear bones remained found. Reindeer significantly higher than all the other species at just over 2,300 bones that he found. We're still finding reindeer bones in Castle Pook Cave. Hyena, it's the only cave with hyena bones in it in Ireland, which is interesting, and they occur between 33 and 45,000 years ago. So they were here for, roughly about 10,000 years, feeding on reindeer primarily, as well as mammoth and so on. Woolly mammoth, then we have about 168, 170 bones of woolly mammoth. Interestingly, there's a number of cats. Now, unfortunately, with anything coming into a cave, because water influxes are coming in so much, and if there is flooding, everything gets mixed up, so the stratigraphy gets all messed up, even though we do find parts where there is stratigraphy there, but certain parts of the cave are affected by water influxes. And whether these cats are wild cats or recent domestic cats, I will be measuring them and running the stats. There's a way to distinguish between domestic and wild cat just by their bone measurements. But also we'd have to date them really to know when exactly they came. And there's not too much dog or wolf remains. At times it's very hard to distinguish dog and wolf due to size alone, unless you have the mandible. Some of the skulls that I've looked at are dog rather than wolf. So these things have to be subjected to ancient DNA, and that's where the Francis Crick Institute comes in with Punta Skullgland driving that lab. So if you look at, this is Usher's original map of Castlepook Cave, and you can see he had interesting names for various parts of the cave. Hall of the Earthquakes, there's a lot of rubble that has fallen down in this part. Elephant Hall was where he found a lot of woolly mammoth remains. Originally the natural cave, I have to move my thing, the natural cave entrance was over here. So this was the natural one. This entrance gallery here was the one that Usher dynamited in to get a big stretch of straight out road with a plank with a wheelbarrow. But you can see that just inside the natural entrance, there's Hyena Hall and Wolf Hall, where wolf and hyena bones were found. Some of the interesting ones as well, Hall of the Agonies, we're not quite sure what's going on there. And Blue or Fairy Hall up here is a massive chamber. It used to have very nice, delicate stalactites and stalagmites remains and speleothem and so on. So very glittery on the inside. However, since Usher was in, it's been pilfered, and a lot of that lovely speleothem has been knocked out. So you can see the extent of the cave isn't, it's big enough. It takes around about kind of 40 minutes to get from this end up here all the way down to Hyena Land down here. That's by an experienced caver. So if we, in 1970s, so again, this is a new cave. In 1970s, a new section below this gallery down here, this new section was found by a number of cavers, including Jerry Ahern, who's pictured here. Jerry joined us on our excavations in Castlepook in 2022, in June 2022, and he's sprightly age of a young 70. He was down underneath, clambering over through all the passages like a young boy again. He remembered everything. So but thanks to him, there's this new section of cave which was never explored by Usher. So that's where we had I suppose our faith in terms of trying to find more animal bone in the cave. Down here, Tibia Passage, there was a leg bone, a tibia bone of a woolly mammoth found. Now it's, how it got down that far, because like some of these areas here are very tight and crawling areas, remains to be seen, whether there was a different entrance somewhere else or a fall from the ceiling of the cave. So this is so we, as I said, we work collaboratively with the Cork Speleological Group. There's a number of cavers that came and made sure we were all nice and safe. and our cave archaeologists going in and out of the cave in Castlepook in 2022. This is Stan, Brian, Terry, Michael, Jerry, and Colin, all members of the Cork Speleological Group. And then we have our archaeologists. We've Richard here, Phil, Kenny, Claire, Kez, and of course Phil again, Louise, Helen from UCD, and Pat, who's over from Northumbria University. He's basically he also scanned the interior of the cave in certain parts, a 3D scan and photogrammetry outside. So, you know, and there's me. So we all got on very well, which was great because it makes for a happy working team. And of course, we had many locals that dropped by as well for chats and questions, and these were welcomed. And as part of the archive, portraits of all visitors are taken, so they kind of form part of a cultural history or a cultural heritage associated with our excavations, which is quite important. And towards the end, you'll see why. But this is Pat, one of the local guys who basically was down every day with his friend Donny. Donny was a bit shy of the camera. I will eventually take Donny's portrait, but they were on hand, like if we needed any backup support or if we'd any problems with the generator, we knew that we could call these people, and to get such a warm welcome from the community for any excavation is quite important, as you probably well know. So bats and caves go hand in hand. Bats do love caves, especially the interior of caves. They're, you know, it's very constant temperature, very safe environment for bats. So a passive bat survey was conducted before, during, and after the excavation for a period of 6 weeks. Derogation license was obtained from National Parks and Wildlife Service to conduct our excavations, and certain rules were followed, which they were. So the bat survey resulted in no bats within the cave itself, whereas outside the cave there were 7 species recorded, which was very diverse. So it's really good to see that there's bats doing well down there. In terms of health and safety then, this was again the Cork Speleological Group, and Stan and the rest of the cavers who assisted us put in various assists within the cave at tricky bits, so our cave archaeologists didn't have to I suppose risk the injury side of things. So various ladders were put in temporarily. They were removed then after we were finished. This yellow cable going down is all the way down to the bottom of the new section where we were excavating, and that's actually a little phone, so they could phone up to the top and ask for the lights to be put on, which aided with their work during the excavation in certain areas. So the safe routes were established through the cave before we even arrived by the cavers, which was brilliant. We can't do our work without feeling safe, and that's an important issue within, I suppose, all excavations, but particularly within cave excavations. And they were on site then throughout the whole 2-week excavation period, and we continue to work together with them for all our cave excavations now. These are to show you what conditions in the cave. This is Kez, or one of our cave archaeologists, as you see, crawling through a tight enough passage. Phil dropping down through a hole tight enough. So these are the bags, caving bags, that we bring all of our equipment, so you generally drag them after you. We have Claire here taking notes on an excavation test trench, and then Michael down here, the caver, showing the extent. So just to give you an experience, you can see here, this is now, you think this passage is relatively okay. This pile of bones here, as it turns out, it was reindeer bones in the middle, and you're thinking, oh, that's not too bad. That's not too bad. But oh, I had a little video here, obviously. Sorry, it won't play, but you can see this is Phil. He's had to get on his side, and this passage is a new passage, newly found, and it's called the move or breathe passage. So you can't move and breathe at the same time in this passage. You can do one or the other at alternative times. So you can see it's quite tight, and he was reaching with his arm then further down to reach these bones, and then passing them gently up to Stan, which was waiting here. So then, as I say, outside the mapping, the photogrammetry, LiDAR, and surrounds was and 3D laser within the cave itself was done by Pat Randolph-Quinney of Northumbria University, and then also Kez and Phil assisted him. Stan and the Cork Speleological Group team are using the 3D Lechia Disto to map internally. So they have accurate measurements both of the altitude as well as certain points within the cave. So we get a proper 3D internal cave map once they're finished, which is the most accurate going. And we can compare that and overlap with the original Usher map and see how they all fit up. So our goal is to have a 3D map and georeference position, and then superimpose the external mapping as well over it, so we know what's going on where, and then to place through a GIS the bones back in that Usher originally excavated. But that's for next year. That's part of my tasks for next year. So Castlepook 2022 excavation, then this is the new section down. Remember I mentioned the tibia passage where the tibia bone was found. So we've one cutting here down in the lower bone passage, and then cutting here number 2 in the upper bone passage. So we figured these were it's filled with a fine sand, which normally you find animal bones in. And this is what it looks like. We've sand and clay deposits, and we found brown bear remains and Arctic lemming teeth, and also a hair tooth as well, retrieved from the upper context number 1, and then in context 13 as well, which is a lower context. And then in the cutting number 2 in the upper bone passage, you can see the difference in color of the sediment. We've sand and clay deposits again, but a different color. We'd also charcoal in the upper 16, context 16, and the next one, context 18. And then one of these pieces we subjected to radiocarbon dating as well. So then sampling in the upper gallery. So this is the original Usher map. Remember, this is the natural entrance going in here, and this is the entrance gallery that Usher dynamited through in. So we had one large cutting here, number 3, and then a smaller one, number 4. So small test pits, so to speak. And also sediment and ancient DNA samples, from basically sediment samples were taken for ancient DNA from Elephant Hall as well, as there was in situ cave sediments still left in Elephant Hall, but there was no sediments left in Hyena Hall either. So basically Usher didn't get everything in his excavations. So this is cutting number 3 in the upper part of the in the upper part of the cave, and we have a in situ possible in situ speleothem layer, this kind of jaggedy rugged thing here. We also have an intrusive charcoal layer, and then we've redeposited spoil from earlier excavations and washed in sand and silt. So the radiocarbon dates results came back in October 2022. There were some of the charcoal was sent to the University of Liverpool for identification of the plant remains. They came back as gorse. We also had hazelnut and gorse in the entrance chamber. Unfortunately, they did come back with 3 modern dates. So basically intrusion, so to speak, people lighting fires. And then in the upper bone passage, we got a medieval date from the radiocarbon. So we reckoned, from what we can see from the strat and everything, that they fell in from above. So somebody in the medieval times lit a fire on top of the cave outside, and then those samples, sediments came in from above. So a small assemblage of animal bones were retrieved. A lot were relatively recent, but there was a mixture of amphibians, so frog bones, relatively recent. There was some birds. There was an eider, duck, femur found inside a cave, which is unusual. It's not their natural habitat. Whether it was dragged in by foxes or something remains to be seen. Again, a date would be nice, but if we think it's kind of recent, it mightn't be worthwhile, but something to think about anyway. We'd more reindeer bones found. This is an Arctic lemming tooth, and I wet sieved some, all the sediment samples. So this is a hair tooth, but you can see this is the Arctic lemming tooth here, this crinkled looking thing. So you can see they're quite small when you see it even next to a hair tooth. So this is the results. So we had some birds, we had some Arctic lemmings, we had some juvenile brown bear bones as well, some dog, horse, reindeer and red deer antlers, large red deer antlers. Whether they're ancient or not, unsure. But you can see the recent enough inclusions of cattle, sheep, goat, and of course frog. The cat might be recent. Again, further work is being done on that. So in terms of outreach, then we supply the preliminary report to the National Monuments Service. The final report is actually going in quite shortly. We gave a talk to the speleological group, the Speleological Union of Ireland, in October 2022, as well as the local community talk in Doneraile just there 2 weeks ago. So they were delighted to be informed what's going on in their region. We've ongoing post-ex analysis in terms of the ancient sediment DNA. It's quite a complex procedure. We soil micromorphology profiles being analysed at the moment. Again, the processing of the cave survey data, both internally and externally, and then further radiocarbon dating of the selected animal bones as well. So then for fieldwork 2023, we plan this September to go back to Castlepook Cave to do a geophysical survey to locate infilled natural entrances around Castlepook, like in the fields surrounding the cave. We have just completed our excavation at Kilcoman Cave, which was 2 weeks there, the first 2 weeks in April. And we also then plan to go back to Kilcoman Bog in September to take a core from the bog after some geophys. We'll also be hitting some other caves in September, including Kilgraney Cave in County Waterford for quick sampling. And so I'm taking soil micromorphology profiles. And of course, Mike Sims is already beginning or in the process of writing up his report on both Kilcoman Cave as well as Castlepook Cave for inclusion, especially the Castlepook Cave for inclusion in the first of the 2 papers that I talked about earlier. So the coalesce funding then we have, because our projects overlap, it's mainly for post-ex analysis of the faunal collections in the National Museum of Ireland and the National Museums of Northern Ireland. So that's in terms of radiocarbon dating, stable isotopes, ancient DNA, and so on. And of course, we're sampling at Kilgraney Cave in Waterford in September, and then the Kesh Caves in County Sligo in 2024. So this is in terms of Castlepook, you can see the rocky outcrop is covered by trees, but this is our targeted square for geophys. So the cave underneath does extend down here. So we hope to find natural infilled cave entrances, because those hyenas had to be getting in somewhere down here. And if, depending on where these the natural infilled entrances are, we might be able to do a test trench or something like that if the farmer gives us permission. So just to put in perspective, Castle Pook Cave is here, and then 2 kilometers as the crow flies is Kilcolman Cave. So this is where we hit just the first 2 weeks in April. There's a castle nearby as well, Kilcolman Castle, and there's a lime kiln. The entrance chamber is about 10 meters by 7 by 3 meters and has collapsed boulders in the rear of the cave, so it prevents deeper access. Whether there is a passageway, extensive or not, behind remains to be seen. We're working with cavers to they're in the process of trying to dig out a portion of that to see if there's any behind the rubble, to see if there's any further passages behind. It was very briefly explored by Usher in 1904 before he got taken up with what was going on in Castle Pook Cave. So it is extremely rare to excavate the Pleistocene deposits and sediments from a relatively pristine cave. So this is the rocky outcrop of Kilcolman Cave, this Kilcolman Castle here, and the lime kiln is here. This row of this hedgerow here doesn't exist anymore. So this is what Kilcolman Cave looked in 1934. So you can see substantial a lot of sediment. So we got fairly excited. And this was taken in a recce in 2022 to see what it's looked. So a lot of the sediment has been removed, and there's this old brick wall, presumably made to prevent cattle getting back into the far reaches of the passageways, before the rubble fall. So again, Pat came to visit us, the local fixer, so to speak, and then these are the Harold Barrys, the family who actually own the land and where the cave is situated. Very supportive, very interested in our work, which makes a huge difference, and it's fantastic to have. The caving team, we have Stan again and Brian, and then newcomers Monica and Denise, all very helpful, keeping us safe, make sure that we're doing what we're meant to be doing under safe access and so on. And then we had our caving archaeologists and other collaborators. So Phil, Richard again with Nick from UCC, Rhea, Kevin, and then we these 3 wonderful students from John Moores University in Liverpool. They're undergrad students, so they were doing their work placements with us. So they got to grips with how to use a trowel and how to sieve and how to clean back and so on, and looking at stratigraphy in caves. So it was a wonderful experience to have them with us. And then we have our ongoing collaboration with John Flynn, an artist in County Cork. So exciting times coming there with John and myself later this year. And of course we have Mike Sims, Dr. Mike Sims, in his full gear, just coming out of Kilcolman Cave, making notes, etc. So with the community support and outreach, it's very important that we, I suppose, locals are dropping into us and chatting and so on, and there's an exchange of information and an exchange of cultural heritage. And through this we met Nora, who's a retired teacher and a local amateur historian, and her father purchased a box of old glass photography plates back a few decades ago, and Nora kept them, and inside them were old glass plates from Richard Usher's excavation from Castle Pook from his time there. Some of them she got printed out. This is one of Richard's workers, Usher's workers, with a large mammoth bone. So she's kindly allowed me to borrow these, and I will be digitizing them and then giving them back to her, so she'll have a copy of the digital works as well as we, and she'll have the originals back. But like something like that, where she comes up to us and said, "Oh, I have this, would you be interested?" And it's like, this kind of snapshot in time. Like, I've never seen any of these photographs on these plates anywhere else. So it's very important that we support the community outreach, and it works both ways for us. So this is the inside of Kilcoman Cave. We excavated a large trench here, and we actually had to do a step down because it kept going. We cleaned a lot of the sides of the cave, still had original sediment in it. Unfortunately, the landowner had scooped out a lot of the existing sediment, but which made our lives actually a lot easier, because then we could see the stratigraphy and the various sediments laid down. So there was aspects of fast flowing water and slow flowing water. So very, very fast flowing water at one stage, which might be glacier melt water during the last ice age. So we're most grateful for the support and permissions given by the various private landowners, for Castlepoo Cave, Mrs. Helen Howell, and for Kilcoman Cave, Mr. Charles Harold and their families. We're also grateful for the community of Doneraile and its surrounds, and the supportive welcome that we get. And of course, we're grateful for ongoing support from National Parks and Wildlife Conservation Rangers and all our funders, the Royal Irish Academy, the Irish Research Council, and Cork County Council as well. And of course, our many collaborators, including the cavers of the Cork Speleological Group. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask, but thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much for that, Ruth. That was very interesting and very exciting. You said you have two publications, major publications coming out, I think, by September. You didn't want to talk too much about them, but can you actually tell us what the journals are so we can look out for them?
Well, we haven't submitted yet. So, our target journals, the first one will be targeted for Nature journal, a high impact journal. And then the second one would be targeted for proceedings of the National Academies of Sciences, which is an American based, but it's archaeological. They do a lot of human animal dynamics and so on and so forth. So
thank you very much.
All right.
I'm just trying to look through the chat there to see questions. So someone has asked, if you happen to be in a cave and you find presumably ancient bones, what should you do? Is there anywhere you can report it to? Is there different legislation or different protocol for finding bones in a cave in County Fermanagh than in County Cork?
I suppose it depends. It depends on what type of bones, if you know what I mean. Obviously, most people mightn't know the difference between human bones and animal bones. Sometimes they look alike. Certainly, brown bear look very like human bones. But I think the best protocol is certainly for Ireland to contact the National Parks and Wildlife Service and the National Monuments of Ireland, and even ourselves and the Cave Speleological Group, the Cork Speleological Group. For in terms of Northern Ireland, I'm not sure, you've different legislation than we have, but I suppose the museum, the Ulster Museum, would probably be your best bet in Fermanagh, for example, to contact them directly. Certainly Mike Sims would be a good one to chat to.
Okay, thank you, Ruth. Any questions from people who are here and present tonight? No. Just sorry. Yeah. I don't know if you heard that, Ruth. Someone has asked.
I didn't. No.
Someone has asked, is there any history of the caves, how the caves were created, or the first references to them in the history, the actual oral or written history of the caves?
Not as far as we found as such, apart from what Usher was being told. He was being told a lot of the information of where caves were by word of mouth. And then he would have, written down. He explored an awful lot of caves in Ireland from about 1886 thereabouts to when he died in 1914. But he did get around a lot. But like in terms of how they formed and so on, that's where you're going back to whether it's millions of years or thousands, tens of thousands of years. Possibly, there's no humans around back then, but that's where Mike Sims, the expertise of Mike Sims, will be relying on in terms of how he can infer from looking at the various structures and the various composition of the cave, how it formed and when it formed. So.
Okay, thank you, Ruth. There's a lot of people saying fascinating talks and marvelous, and thank you.
Thank you.
Thomas McErlean has asked, are there any details of red deer DNA?
There is, yeah. We published the paper for we had some ancient DNA from various caves, as well as other sites from archaeological history. So we had before the Ice Age, around about, I think it was 28,000 thereabouts years ago, and then post, like then there's this gap, and we did date an awful lot of red deer bones, but there is actually a gap from basically the ice, when the last ice sheet was covered, until the Neolithic. We have this. There wasn't, as far as we can tell at the time, there was no red deer in Ireland in the Mesolithic or late glacial. So there is a real gap there. We dated something like 40 different red deer bones, trying to find Mesolithic red deer, but we never found them. So we did publish it in 2012 in Quaternary Science Reviews. If you want to drop me an email, I can forward on that paper, no problem.
That's good. Thank you, Ruth.
Yeah.
We've had a couple of people asking, I'm not quite sure if this was part of your research, but were any human bones found in the pre-Ice Age bone collection? So you concentrated a lot, mostly on the animal faunal remains, but I suppose there are questions to be asked if about the human.
Today's not yet. From the various research that we've done, I think that humans were primarily outside of the caves rather than living inside the caves. So you have scavengers, hyena, brown bear, wolves, taking the bones that humans hunted outside and dragging them into the cave. So that seems to be a theory that we're putting forward for Castle Cook Cave. But as yet, there's no evidence of human bones. Judging, it would have to be preserved quite deeply, and whether the ice then came and then extended down as far as it did, and then literally scoured the earth and brought everything with it, and therefore destroyed human remains that were there, remains to be seen. I don't, after what we found and what I've seen, I'm not ruling out anything anymore. Okay,
no, that's completely understandable, and it's kind of one of the things I was trying to get my head around as someone who has never worked on an excavation in the cave, how the bones got there. You mentioned things like hyenas and other animals being in the caves, but were other of the bones brought in through kind of movement of land and etc.? So there's evidence of animals living in the cave, but other bones, were they brought in, washed in?
It's probably a mixture of everything.
Yes.
It's something that I'm hoping we can address a bit more detail next year, once we get once we have the proper interior map done by the cavers. We work together then with Mike Sims in terms of how movement of water goes through the cave and what's likely and what's not, and then any falling in from the cave roof as well. So and then predator-prey relationships and denning behaviors and so on like that by the animals. So it's probably a combination of so many different factors, all boiling into the fact that we have bones in caves.
Okay, thank you. Another person has asked, were there any issues with rain or groundwater during the excavations?
No, we were lucky. Only in the deepest part of Castlepook is there actually water. It's not that deep, but you wouldn't probably want to chance it during flooding or anything like that. But generally speaking, Castlepook and Kilcoman are considered to be dry caves.
Okay, thank you. There's another question from someone. Is the assumption that the bear kneecap was inscribed shortly after death or much later?
We can tell by the way the morphology or the anatomy of the cut mark that was made on freshly dead bone. So it's like when you cut butter with a knife. So when you go in with the knife, you're pushing the outside or the uppermost down all the way through to the bottom of the cut. So when you take the knife off and look at the bottom of your cut butter, you see a slump down the bottom. And that is basically what happens with fresh bone. You get a stone tool making a linear mark, and it actually pushes some of the outside of the bone down into the cut, and it's down at the bottom. So we can see that on the incised marks. Yeah. So freshly dead.
So freshly cut. Okay. So another question: any marine mammal bones in these caves?
Not so far.
Not so far. Okay. You'd mentioned, I think, eider duck.
Eider, yeah, which is unusual. You know, they don't go into caves, like they're not a cave animal. But I haven't, due to limited access at the moment with the National Museum of Ireland collections. I've only limited access to Castlepook cave collections of bones at the moment. But the bird, there are birds' bones from the caves. I've seen them before and segregated them out. So hopefully access will improve and I'll gain access to the birds, because that's part of the story as well. Whether they're predator-prey relationships, you know, be it animals or humans eating birds within the cave is interesting as well. So.
Okay, thank you. Any last questions? Anyone? I don't see any other questions. Ruth, we've been asked if people contact us, will you be happy for us to give them your email address? And people
yeah,
should
sure.
want to consider.
That's no problem. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, okay, we will do that. And one last question, like, approximately what's the deepest part of the cave accessed vertically below ground level? How deep have you gone?
How deep? It goes with Castlepook. It goes down to, let's see, I think about 40 to 50 plus meters down below.
Right.
Yeah. So deep enough.
Okay. Look, thank you very much, Ruth. That was a fabulous and, I say, very exciting lecture, and there's more to come. So we may well get you back.
Yeah.
Thank you for
once
talking.
Those papers are published, you can get me back.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much.
Well, thank you for talking to us tonight.
And thank you for everyone for listening. Thank you.
Good night.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.